In the United States, airports are not places that people feel good in. They're crowded, there's lines, there isn't much to do or to enjoy. So the opportunity to reimagine that here in the US was just really intriguing and something I wanted to dive into.
Today I'm here with Amina Belouizdad Porter, the CEO of PS, the first operator of private airport terminals for commercial flyers in the US. Its mission? To make you feel like you're flying private, even when you're not. This means even if you're flying, let's say coach with Delta, you're getting valet service, massages, caviar and champagne, a chauffeur waiting to drive you to your plane. This is what PS, the company formerly known as Private Suite, sees as the future of luxury travel, and it's betting many more people will see it that way too. In this episode, we actually go there so you can see it for yourself.
With respect, there are some people who could look at PS and say, this is an embarrassment of riches. What problem exactly is this solving?
PS was first born in Los Angeles as a haven for paparazzi-weary celebrities. Now the company's expanded to Atlanta, with more coming to Paris, Dallas, and Miami. It was recently acquired by a major operator of dozens of airports, including Paris-Charles de Gaulle.
If you want to skip the airport and get your time back and have a relaxing experience with no lines and no crowds, I think everyone would raise their hand up for that.
The best way to understand this business is to see it for yourself. So we first paid a little visit to PS at Los Angeles International Airport. Except this felt nothing like it. And at no point do you set foot in the main airport. That's kind of the whole idea. Here, the first thing travelers are greeted with: caviar and champagne. We caught up with CEO Amina Belouizdad Porter, who showed us what the experience would look like.
Thanks for coming here.
Experience for me.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It's pretty new for everyone in the sense that PS, is the first private airport terminal for commercial flights in the United States. This one here in Los Angeles. We created this concept. In fact, we created this category. No such thing exists in the United States. Now, around the world, there's similar services that very much inspired us. So I'm glad that this is new to you. It's supposed to be new to you. And we're going to hear planes drive by. We are still, in fact, at the airport, despite appearances. So, Michelle, most of our on a departing experience, we would ask you to come an hour and a half before your flight.
Yeah.
And you would enjoy the services here: food, drink, massages, nail service. We have all that. It's complimentary.
Manicures and spa services might not be the first thing you think of at an airport. But apparently, a real highlight of PS is good old food and drink. So we head to the bar and lounge where guests usually relax before taking off.
The salon is best for single travelers, couples, for families with children and pets especially. We definitely recommend the private suite. But the salon has just much more of a social kind of members club sort of vibe.
What are some of the options that you have here? I understand you have chef-prepared food as well.
Yeah, we have a full kitchen with a chef, a sous chef, a pastry chef, all the line chefs. It's a big operation. We make everything from scratch.
But the real star treatment comes in the form of their private suites, which feel more like a 5-star hotel room than a lounge, with a day bed where you can sleep and amenities customized for every traveler.
We try to be thoughtful and anticipatory. If you have allergens, we restock the suites of the snacks available. If you're traveling with a baby, without you asking us, you'll enter your suite and there'll be diapers, a diaper pail, toys for your baby, formula if you need that, baby bottles.
And just to be clear, even in some of the nicest first class or business class lounges, you wouldn't necessarily get that kind of personalized treatment, right? Like you're not going to get diapers and formula, certainly.
No.
What you probably wouldn't get either is a private security check. That's where we head to next.
Exactly.
It should take you all of 10 seconds.
Exactly.
This is basically probably the most peaceful TSA process
It is.
I've ever seen.
It is. That's everything the airport is not, and that's everything we want to be is peaceful.
Now this is the clincher, the part that really makes it feel like you're flying private. Riding to the plane in a chauffeured car.
And you see this as the future of luxury travel.
Absolutely. It's not too wild to imagine that a private airport terminal for commercial flights can and should exist at every major city around the world. We've proven in LA, in Atlanta, soon in Dallas and Miami, and Paris that we're integrating, that there is demand for this. Yes, it is ultra high net worth individuals, but also people splurging. It's your honeymoon. It's, an anniversary. It's a special trip.
When you arrive, you're walked up the JetBridge stairs to board your flight, choosing whether to get on at the start or end of boarding. Stepping out on the airfield, surrounded by jumbo jets like 747s and A380s, it's a sight to be seen. One that I'm told never gets old.
Amina, here we are in studio. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.
Let's start with some context.
Sure.
Can you walk us through, Amina, a bit about your background and where you grew up and what shaped your ambitions early on?
Sure. So I'm Algerian. I was born in Algeria. My parents are Algerian. I grew up in Abu Dhabi, though, in the United Arab Emirates. Before Abu Dhabi was the Abu Dhabi we know it as today. It wasn't really a global city then. It was certainly on its way there, but not as much of a cosmopolitan center of commerce and tourism as it is today. Grew up there, went to international school there. Very quickly knew that part of the world was not where I wanted to be long term. I just had ambitions to kind of go west. And west I went. I went to college in Canada for undergrad. And then I spent 6 years living and working in China.
Right.
I studied Mandarin as a minor in undergrad, and that fooled me into thinking that I could speak Mandarin. I could not, but quickly solved that problem by living in China. And in China, I held various roles, all kind of touching the hospitality industry, in finance, but also in development and operations. Moved to the U.S. a little over a decade ago now to go to business school. Worked in private equity there, and then one day, a recruiter called me while I was working in finance, overseeing investment deals for various real estate companies, some with an operating component, some without, so office, multifamily, but also senior housing and student housing, things like that. But a recruiter called me and said, a private equity firm is looking to recruit the leadership team for a novel concept that was born within another portfolio companies of theirs. And it's essentially a startup. I mean, not essentially, it was very much a startup. And it's a private terminal for commercial flights. The second I read that, the job description, and really the description of the company, I can't explain it. I just felt like I was designed in a lab to build this. I guess the need was clear. Not that I was a premium traveler at all. But I noticed that as someone with an international background, with not a U.S. passport, frankly, with some, some would say undesirable passports. I mean, from Middle Eastern countries that are not, that get you through random screenings when you fly into the U.S. and things like that. I was acutely aware of the fact that airports in the U.S. are a security product and not a hospitality product, versus, say, airport experiences in Singapore and Dubai and Paris and London. Yes, of course they have security, and security is very important, but they haven't sacrificed on the hospitality, the retail, the entertainment part of the experience. Like some of those airports around the world are really enjoyable, are places that people feel good in. And in the United States, airports are not places that people feel good in. They're crowded. Again, the security element is front and center. It's really the defining part of the experience. They're crowded. There's lines. There isn't much to do or to enjoy in the time that you dwell, which is usually a couple hours. And so the opportunity to reimagine that here in the U.S. Was just really intriguing and something I wanted to dive into.
Yeah, so much to unpack there. But I guess my first question on that would be, had you ever been in a similar concept type of terminal before?
I had not, actually. I'd been in lounges and things like that. But lounges, first of all, lounges only serve you on a departure. On arrival, you cannot access a lounge. Also, lounges kind of reward you after elbowed your way through the roughest parts of the airport, the most painful parts. At the end, there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, which is, you got to the lounge. And so just when I was learning about this concept, and obviously I dove deep into it and researched the fact that similar concepts, similar private terminals for commercial flights, yes, do exist in places like London and Dubai and things like that. And it just made so much sense that there would be something that fills this very vast gap between private and commercial travel. Because the gap is so wide from an experience point of view, but it's also so wide from a price point of view. And so it's not hard to imagine that there is a large cohort of customers that would pay more than the airport, which is free, and less than commercial private flights to have something in between. It just made so much sense.
Yeah, you felt like it filled that white space that you didn't even realize.
That's right. That wasn't for me. I wasn't the target market, but I could quickly see through all my travels and my experiences that the white space was so vast and that this is a clear solution that I hadn't thought of, but that there's probably many solutions actually in that space.
And I guess growing up, did you always have an itch to do something entrepreneurial, do something different?
I would put it as, be the architect of my own destiny, in whatever form that took. But I wasn't really satisfied with just sitting at a corporate job and having my destiny be in the hands of politics or rank and file or other things. I was really aware of that. Maybe it's because my dad always held corporate jobs and I would always hear of, didn't get promoted because this gentleman, knows this person or, and it just felt really unfair. I had that drive to put myself in situations where it was purely, the outcome of my work was purely based on my own inputs and not on externalities. Like say politics or, things like that. So that was something I grew up with that I was very clear on that. And I guess entrepreneurship is a manifestation of kind of that desire.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fast forward to college though. You've shared that you moved to North America. Was it days before 9/11?
Yeah, that's right.
And
I think it was 3 days before 9/11.
Wow.
Yeah, which, first of all, I went to college in Canada, so it wasn't in the United States. But still, I think there's always been a solidarity between Canada and the U.S. in that sense. And being from that part of the world, coming from the Middle East, and then overnight having this stigma, I would say, against people from the Middle East was just really jarring. It was really formative. Now people were very kind and I wasn't subject to any prejudice or anything like that. But there was almost like a cloud a little bit over not just me, but all of the foreign students from that part of the world, as that culture was broadly tainted as evil. Of course, there were very evil players, but I think it just got demonized a little bit, and it was just a weird time.
Totally
Weird time.
Can understand that. How did that shape how you represent yourself and your community, do you think?
I think the way it's shaped me, it's a very deep question, Michelle, but I think the way it's shaped me is that I'm not someone who assigns a lot of value, good or bad, to where you're from. Because I think that those definitions have changed so much over time. It used to be, and they will continue to change.
Yeah.
It used to be about your nuclear family, and then it was about the bigger family, and then it was about the tribe, and then it was about the village, and then it was about the country, and now it's about a region. And I'm hoping that eventually it'll just be about we're all humans on planet Earth. And these lines are so arbitrary. Sometimes they're drawn across, geographic lines, sometimes by colonists, sometimes by, regional wars, sometimes by religion. I just don't think they're that important. And that 9/11 incident, I think, illuminated that for me, where I'm like, just because those people are from there doesn't mean, the evil players, the evil actors doesn't mean I have anything in common with them. And so to bucket me or anyone into that is pretty asinine. And I think I've carried that with me, where it's like, I truly don't care where people are from, in the sense that like, it doesn't mean anything to me. Sure, obviously it's part of their circumstance and affects them, but I don't assign any value or I don't have any preconceived notions about it.
Do you feel like that maybe just reinforced your belief that, you know, you kind of just see things across borders, right?
Yeah.
Like just really made you lean more into that international side of things and the fact that people are really cross-cultural these days. Yeah, it sounds like that.
I mean, I look at like, so I have a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old, and I look at my 3-year-old's preschool class, and everybody is like a quarter this, a half that, whatever. It's like, what does it even mean anymore?
Yeah,
You know?
and increasingly so, right?
Yeah, everybody almost is like mixed in terms of, you know, ethnicity, religion, if you even care to like assign those things. So it's like, I think it is hopefully becoming more and more meaningless to kind of assign the past. Now, by the way, I'm a big proponent of tradition and culture and all that, but that can be, that's such a personal definition, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you kind of touched on this as well, but you had quite a range of different experiences around the world in various industries before moving to the role that you're in now. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Because you mentioned that you were in China. Your Mandarin is surely better than mine. I think you're a polyglot as well, aren't you? I read that you speak 5 languages.
Yeah. 4.5 these days. But my Spanish is really rusty, which is really ironic given I live in LA and Spanish is obviously pretty prevalent here. I just don't have the opportunity to practice it, unfortunately, or I don't find it. But I speak English, hopefully. I speak French. I'm Algerian, and you know, most Algerians speak French. I speak Arabic. Now, Arabic is a weird one because Arabic is a very dialect-based language. So depending on where you're from in the Arab world, which last time I checked is, 20 plus countries, you actually have different dialects that at times can't even understand each other. So it's one of those like a little bit of, not a useless, but like if you speak a certain dialect of Arabic, you can only speak to other people that understand that dialect. Spanish I studied, and frankly, Spanish is quite easy to understand once you speak French. They're I think Romance languages. And in Mandarin.
Yes.
Mandarin, it's really hard to live and work in China for 6 years and not end up speaking Mandarin fluently.
Yeah.
You sort of have to. So I don't really pat myself on the back for that one too much. It was kind of an output of my time in China.
And you were in Shanghai specifically, right?
I was in Beijing for a year and Shanghai for 5. Yeah.
And what were you doing there? You mentioned it was hospitality.
Yeah, it was various angles of hospitality. My first job wasn't hospitality at all, but it touched hotels, where I was an analyst for a hotel investment fund. So it was a finance job. But, the numbers on the spreadsheet were about hotels.
Right.
And then my second job was for a global hotel interior design firm, kind of building out their business development practice in China and then more broadly, kind of Asia. And then my third job was I joined 2 friends who had just raised some capital to build the first boutique hotel in Shanghai. And that was a really fun entrepreneurial experience because there was no real job description. It was like 1 second it was development, and 1 second it was overseeing strategy, 1 second it was helping out with operations, 1 second it was like trying to sign more leases and do partnerships with big Chinese developers. So it was very cowboy, I guess. But you'll learn a lot in those experiences when you don't have, again, any preconceived notions about the way things should be. So you're just figuring it out.
Yeah.
And I always say that when I went to business school, I learned the fancy words and the terms to apply to the things that I had already learned.
Right. I see a through line emerging here, by the way.
Oh, do you?
Yeah,
okay,
because obviously,
tell me.
There's like so much to do with the hotel world, right? And the travel business, even just like peripherally. So it sounds like you were always somewhat drawn to the hospitality space, which makes sense today, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. And I can't tell how much of it was by design or by accident. But it was definitely a consistent theme.
Right. Fast forward to today, because you obviously now have been CEO of PS since 2018.
Yeah.
We have now been to tour the PS terminal at LAX, which is part of this episode. So thank you for having us.
Of course.
It's such a haven. But what strikes me the most is, when you walk around, you get this sense of comfort and luxury and pampering. Though I learned recently that PS actually started out as part of a security and logistics business. Tell us a bit more about that origin story, which I think not that many people know.
Yeah, and it's so critical to our DNA that I do love telling the story. So there is a very highly esteemed, very established protective services, which is a way of saying security or maybe even bodyguard. If I were to reduce it to that, it's a lot more than that. Company called GDBA, Gavin de Becker and Associates. That's the top of its field. The founder of that business, his name is Galvin, his namesake is his business, observed that his high-profile clients, when they flew commercial, because yes, even they too fly commercial at times, would utilize services like what is now PS, where they existed, which is outside the US. So in places like London and Dubai, et cetera. When they flew commercial, they would use these private terminals for commercial flights. And so he pitched his investors, which at the time were a private equity firm, on developing this concept here, and he got it going. And we credit a lot of, we have to. I mean, he got the kind of a lot of the hard part going in terms of trailblazing from a regulatory perspective, especially an operational perspective, the way that we can operate, which is as a private building, to act as essentially a de facto airport, have our own TSA agents, have our own Customs and Border Protection agents. These are not easy things to do. He also secured the first lease, which was here in Los Angeles.
Right, because you lease the building from the airport.
Yeah,
That's
all buildings on airport land are for lease only.
Right.
Yeah. Our landlord's essentially the airport.
Right.
But more than that, so of course, got it going with his, yes, know-how, but also credibility and reputation, but also infused what is now PS with an undeniable sort of cultural imprint around precision and excellence that is 100% necessary in the security space. For obvious reasons. You have people's lives in your hands, right? So you have to be foolproof, and there is a zero tolerance for error. Now, if we came at our business with just a hospitality angle, of course, hospitality companies, especially luxury ones, strive for excellence and precision. But you get someone's coffee wrong, it's not the end of the world, right? But we come at it with that same focus on zero tolerance for error. And I think that's allowed us to really thrive. Because some of what we do, there is zero tolerance. We're driving cars on the airfields past taxiing aircraft. We are putting people through security, and we could not. I mean, of course, we wouldn't do that. But we're custodians of this really important relationship with TSA, Customs and Border Protection. So, we hold immigration services and things like that. So having a zero tolerance approach is really important. And I think we've inherited that from kind of that origin story. So it's funny how even as companies evolve and as the people completely switch out, that some pieces of culture remain. And that's a good one.
I know that you've mentioned some of the regulatory hoops that obviously the business had to jump through in order to even provide this service, right? Did you mention that you guys had to lobby Congress for several years? Because obviously not only do you stringently follow TSA protocol, but also, I imagine there's other clearances that you have to make sure you get, since it's the first of its kind. It's unprecedented in the US.
That's right. It's a privilege, not a right, which comes back to that zero tolerance for error, because we have to make sure that we abide by all these rules and essentially promises that we made in order to have this relationship. And as a result, it's an ongoing, I wouldn't call it lobby, but, assurance that we have to give Department of Homeland Security, and rightfully so, to ensure that we have this long-term exception of a relationship.
How long did it take all in to get that approval in order to run the facility? Was
I
it 4
want to
years?
say
I think
a few years. I want to say it was probably 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because I've also seen you make an important point about airport congestion. You've said that the service improves security and congestion for all of, let's say, LAX's passengers, right?
Sure.
Because it's fully funded by those who create the most congestion issues, which are high-risk travelers.
That's right.
Can you expand a bit on that? Like,
Sure, sure. I mean, it used to be that before PS opened at LAX in Los Angeles, it used to be that, first of all, there was 100 plus, this is a fact, 100 plus paparazzi incidents. Not paparazzi showing up, but actual incidents where someone's getting hurt or something's going on at LAX every year. Because if a high profile public figure walked through the airport, people are distracted, people are taking photos, people are taking autographs. In extreme case, there's crowds of people. It creates a security issue for everybody. TSA agents are distracted, people are overwhelmed. It's not good for anyone, not just the public figure, even kind of the public at large that's at the airport. And ever since we opened, the number of those incidents has gone down to 0. So from a security point of view, the airport is now safer for everyone, not just the high-risk travelers, which are usually public figures. It's just a smoother experience for everyone. And there's less congestion because, again, those public figures create congestion where they go. I mean, we know when they walk into a restaurant, it's like a big crowd and,
frenzy.
Yeah, frenzy, right?
Yeah.
And so that calm, that we've left a trail of calm at LAX because those people are choosing to come to PS instead. And that creates a much better experience for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you shared that, Amina, because with respect, there are some people who could look at PS and say, this is an embarrassment of riches. What
Sure.
problem exactly is this solving, right? But you're here to say, listen, there's a serious concern that we're clearing up here, and we're very deliberate about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. There's also the honest answer, which is there are and always has been and always will be kind of many tiers to travel, right? And so this is just like squeezing one in between a few, but you could make the argument, the embarrassment of riches about private jet travel.
Or any luxury.
Luxury, or paying for a lounge.
Super yacht.
Yeah, or a super yacht, or paying for first class and not economy. We didn't invent the fact that there are many tiers to travel.
Yeah.
That has existed.
Right.
We just slotted kind of one in along the spectrum.
Yeah, to make it easier. Well, contrary to what some may think, PS is not just a private members club, right? It also allows folks to come use the space on an a la carte basis, although you can get memberships.
Sure.
Can you tell us a bit, just broadly, without naming names, what does your typical customer look like?
I think most people view us as a, public figure or celebrity terminal, and that is a minority of our business. It's 15% or less, 10 to 15% of our business only is that. The rest is non-public figures. It is a premium traveler or an occasional premium traveler. And what I mean by that, it is, of course, someone that probably travels at the front of the plane and, it is a luxury traveler, quite a bit of business travel as well. But also it is occasional in the sense that it's your honeymoon and you're going to splurge once. Or it's your anniversary and you're going to splurge once. So we do have that as well. Almost all of our client base here in Los Angeles, for the PS LAX terminal, resides in LA. Almost all of our client base at our PS Atlanta terminal resides in Atlanta. We suspect it'll be the same in Dallas and Miami, where we open next, because it's best used as your home airport.
Right.
And as it relates to membership, to go back to your question, Michelle, so PS is you don't have to be a member to use PS. As I said, it's your honeymoon. You can use this once and never again. And so you pay per experience. However, if you plan to use us many times, there are membership packages which are just more interesting, both from a economic point of view. It ends up being more attractive, but also you have other benefits like priority reservations and complimentary valet and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of touched on this earlier with regard to how PS approached you. But tell us a bit more about the day you were called for this role, because it's not every day, right? You get called to be CEO of a company. What was the first thought that ran through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, it was exactly what I said. When I read the job description, I was like, this is it. This is the thing I didn't know existed, that I didn't know I wanted to do, but here it is. And, the courtship with the private equity firm at the time that owns it was quite long, as I guess is not unusual for roles like this. It's really important to find the right fit. So there were many calls, many working sessions, many in-person meetings. But for me, the vision was very clear on what to do here. And I was not shy to share it, because I also felt that that's how you get to yes. Well, to high quality yes, is to say, this is essentially the business plan as I see it. Not because I was trying to impress them, just because like, if I'm gonna do this, this is what I'd wanna do. And so you have to be on board for this to be successful. And if you disagree, that's okay. That doesn't mean I'm not saying I'm right, but then you're looking for someone else,
right,
not me, right? So it was really thorough in that sense. In many ways, we executed almost, not exactly, but almost to a T, the business plan that I wrote before I even joined. Yeah. And by the way, that is, it's not because I'm a genius. I'm definitely not. It's, I think, because of that rare moment that maybe happens once in a career if you're lucky, and I'm lucky it happened. Hopefully it happens more. Where, again, it was the opportunity met my timing, my sort of vision for it. It was just kind of perfect in that way.
Right place, right time.
That's right.
Yeah. Was it an executive search firm that had called you?
It was, yes.
Right. I should say, by the way, in regard to that business plan, you are a Wharton grad, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, so, no surprise there, I think. When you first took over, what was your biggest priority, I suppose, for the firm's growth?
Yeah.
And how has the company evolved since then?
Yeah, the biggest priority, and this was, again, in that business plan, because I had visited the terminal, so I'd done all the diligence. Obviously, you think you know everything about a business, and you certainly don't from the outside, but I worked with what I had. The first course of action was to pivot the positioning. And when I say positioning, that's a very charged word. That's the brand, the offering, the pricing, the experience, truly everything, to pivot the business from a security offering to a hospitality offering. And that was essentially the crux of the business plan, was to say, hello, board. In my opinion, if you want this to have a larger audience and to be able to scale outside of Los Angeles, which, it's a PE-backed business. Of course, they wanted to have a larger audience and scale. If it wasn't PE-backed, then it was just, a
Scrappy.
scrappy or single owner, then you have a fine business plan as is.
Right.
Because, by the way, these things involve money, CapEx,
right,
and capital and marketing, right? But if you do want those things, which generally private equity firms do, then I felt really strongly that the initial positioning as a security offering wasn't going to cut it, because, first of all, not many people need privacy and security. Public figures do, but the successful businessman,
right, who's already going to first class lounge, maybe,
does not need security and privacy, or at least they don't think that doesn't relate to them, right? And I think that obviously market that needs that is very much over-indexed in Los Angeles because of Hollywood being obviously the prime industry, and so if you could never go to Dallas or Miami or, Chicago or even San Francisco with that security and privacy offering. Because most people, yes, who could afford it, yes, who want to skip the airport, wouldn't resonate with them. They'd be like, okay, but I don't need security and privacy. Right? So we shifted it to a luxury hospitality experience. Really saying, if you want to skip the airport and get your time back and have a relaxing experience, have a calm experience, and have a bespoke luxury hospitality offering with no lines and no crowds, I think everyone would raise their hand up for that. Right? So broaden the appeal in that way.
So what did that entail specifically? Because it sounds like you were trying to shift the vibe, right? You were trying to ensure that this feels luxurious. This feels like you're taken care of.
Yeah.
Was that interior design? Was that a bit of everything?
It was the soft product and the hard product. The hard product is the easiest part, right? The hard product is the branding, the interior design, the food, the drinks, the amenities. That's easy, The soft product of how are we talking to our customers? How are we making them feel? All these inputs to how do you make someone feel, right? Like, how do you deliver bad news? How do you deliver good news? How do you give them space, or how do you give them all the communication they want? How do you make them feel, like they're in a luxury hospitality experience? It's really hard to do that without the right training and without the right people, right? So it was also a shift in the way that we recruited, in our training. We started recruiting more people from that hospitality background. And the mix that we have today, which is we have operationally minded people and hospitality minded people, I think that's where the magic is.
Yeah.
Because we are, at the end of the day, we are a logistics company. Don't be fooled.
Has to be both.
Yes, we're a logistic company, but the hope is the customer never, ever, ever sees or feels that. They only feel the luxury hospitality wrapper around it.
Right. Well, you mentioned earlier as well, your line of work is very capital intensive. Mm-hmm. We've noted, obviously, that PS is private equity backed, but how did you approach things when it came to funding and working with PE backers? Was it kind of a mentality that, unlike other traditional startups, you luckily, hopefully, do have that kind of cushion and that kind of funding that you need in order to provide this high-end experience that you are set out to do?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it, Michelle. I think I think it's really important that the right capital partner is paired with the right kind of business. If you're building a luxury business of any kind, certainly one that's capital intensive like ours, but a luxury business, you need to play the long game. Yes, be scrappy, yes, be all that, but you have to play the long game. You can't sacrifice quality for short-term profits or short-term return. And so we're very lucky that we were, as you mentioned, we're no longer PE-backed. We're owned by a big strategic owner, Groupe ADP. But when we were PE-backed by TPG, they played the long game. We had their commitment that we were building a brand that's going to stand the test of time. And so you can't shortcut your way there. Now, you have to show results around the way, and the pressure is super high. But I think if we were, maybe venture capital backed or something like that, which is more used to like short sprints of capital, I think that would have been really tough for a company like ours.
Yeah, I think that the story obviously differs from other kind of, like you said, like mom and pop shops, right? Where they might have a lot of struggles around that. So it sounds like it was well suited for
That's
the
right.
opportunity
Absolutely.
at hand.
And now our new ownership group, Groupe ADP, is extremely well suited for our growth because they are, they own and or operate something like 25, 26, I think, airports around the world, including Charles de Gaulle, which to me is a crown jewel in terms of what we talked about earlier, which is, yes, it's an airport, but it has a sense of hospitality and retail. It's an experience in and of itself. So they know how to do that at its best in some of the most hostile environments, which are airports. As a long-term strategic owner, they're a great fit.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how do you see the brand continuing to evolve under their stewardship now?
They, first of all, not to stereotype, but being French, they know a lot about building timeless brands. And they certainly have an appreciation for that. And so that understanding is there. They also, with Charles de Gaulle, with their ownership of Charles de Gaulle, and Charles de Gaulle, I think, is the highest grossing airport from a retail perspective. And yes, they have all the beautiful brands, but also they know how to create an environment where people want to be there and spend that money and shop and drink wine and cheese and all that. So they've done that, again, in a hostile environment, which is an airport. So they truly understand what we do, and they want to see it blossom. And they, with their airport footprint, can help us open doors at more airport locations so that we can accelerate our growth. Because the hardest part, there's a lot of hard parts of this business, but one of the hardest parts is securing that real estate to open the next one. Because, we're still a new concept. So when we approach an airport in the United States or elsewhere, there's an education process that is very long to even explain what we do and why we exist and how it works. And then you have to find the actual real estate, which is very scarce. In general, airport real estate is scarce. And then when you identify that, you have to go through a public bid process, which is long and technical and all that. So it's not impossible, but the road to getting another terminal is many years.
I was going to ask, how long does it generally take end to end, right? From scouting the location to speaking to all the relevant authorities to actually getting things up and running to your standard. When you say years,
to up and running,
three to five,
from when 3 to 5, more like 5 than 3.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize, right, just how much work goes into that part of it alone. Before you even launch.
That's right. And at these airports, for the most part, there's one site only that works for us, or maybe 2. Right. And sometimes it's not available because there's a cargo building on it and their lease is up in 5 years. And so you got to wait. So it's not, it's not ideal. But then at the end of the day, that also is how we maintain our monopoly.
Are there any locations coming up down the road that you could tease besides what we've already heard about, Paris, Dallas?
Well, what I'll tell you is, our goal is to be in every major airport in the United States by 2030. We're in LA and Atlanta. We're under construction currently in Dallas and Miami. So there's 5 other airports that make a lot of sense for us. They're pretty obvious. JFK, Newark, Chicago, San Francisco, DC, Boston, Houston, and I know I listed more than 5 because there's 5 that make a ton of sense, but then there's probably 3 or 4 that make also sense in different format, the Houstons, the Denvers, maybe Seattles of the world.
Right.
And we don't have the luxury of, our roadmap is clear in terms of where we want to be, but we don't have the luxury of sequencing it perfectly because of what we described, which is when the right piece of land comes available, we can't control that. And so, Houston might happen before JFK, even though JFK is much more prime, obviously, of a market for us than Houston.
So a lot of it is just explaining how you see this as the future of luxury air travel.
Sure. And the benefits to the airport that we described in terms of security, congestion, and we're a big, big revenue stream to the airport. We're a tenant. We usually are the highest and best use of that real estate. So,
right.
And so it's, it goes into the airport's budget and it's, less taxpayer dollars that they have to raise.
Yeah. Amina, I mentioned to you off air last time that I was really moved by your story, just on a personal note, particularly hearing you speak about some of your past experiences in life in another interview you did. Feel free to share as much or as little as possible here. But sure. I think one big part of your story is that you experienced a tragedy early on, losing your husband at a young age. I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you. How
did you navigate that, and how did that shape your outlook on life and work?
I think it's, so to recap, so my first husband passed away. Let's see, in 2018, actually, right as I was interviewing for the PS role, passed away in an extreme sports accident. So it was very sudden and quick and unexpected. I was 34, and he was just shy of his 38th birthday. And that kind of, we didn't have any children. I say that as in like, it was just him. It was just the two of us. And that turns your world upside down, and in a way, for me, and I don't know, I can't speak for anyone that's gone through that kind of loss or grief, but it brought me a lot of clarity. Because in that moment, a lot of clarity about what I wanted to do with my life and what I didn't want to do, right? Because I think, at least I'm guilty of this, we go through our day-to-day of, I should do this, or social pressures, or whoever, or, the negative talk we have with ourselves. And when you go through a tragedy like that and your life is literally kind of in a vacuum, everything suddenly becomes crystal clear. Like, what's important to you, what's not. What makes you happy, what's not. It's kind of binary. Mm-hmm. And not to sound weird and making this about work, but that was during the interview process for PS. And that's when I was like, I don't want to work. I was working at the time in private equity, real estate private equity. And I knew in that moment, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something else. And PS was the opportunity that I was excited about. But like, regardless, even if PS didn't work out, I just knew, I was like, I don't want to work in finance anymore. In that moment, it was so clear. And a lot of things became clear. Where I was like, I also don't want to be living in Houston, just where we were living. I don't want to, just everything becomes clear because, I guess you're forced into clarity. Yeah. I think you asked what I carry with me. Yeah. A lot of things. I think it shapes you. It probably shaped me more than I know. But one of the things it has done for me is it taught me to slow down. Mm-hmm. I was too focused on the future and where I'm going and typical type A driven. And now I am kind of in a way, I'm the worst thing that could have happened. Yeah. Obviously, unfortunately, life doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, there's probably a lot of bad things that happen in any lifetime. And I survived that. So I think everything and every day with just more calm and more openness and less desire to control and fix things because you learn that life can change like that.
I think I heard you say you just don't sweat the small stuff either.
No, I don't. That's what I mean with the calm and not wanting to control. It's whatever. I say this to my employees. They're like, can I talk to you? Something happened. I'm like, did somebody die? And they're like, no. I'm like, all right, let's talk about it. It's probably not that bad. And it's never that bad.
Absolutely.
It's 99.9% of things that happen are not that bad.
Yeah.
At all.
Right. So that really gave you that clarity and just shaped how you are now as a leader, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm not that cyclical in my moods. And I could probably stand to be a bit more because I think you can get more done when you do that sometimes as a leader. But I just don't sweat the small stuff. Yeah. It's not worth it. And actually, Michelle, one more thing. So just going back to not sweating the small stuff, my house burned down 6 months ago in the Palisades fire. Very tragic for a city of Los Angeles. I think 10,000 homes, something like that, were burned to the ground between the Palisades fire and the Altadena fire. But so we lost every single thing that we owned, everything, including memorabilia I have of my late husband, every single thing.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. But I think that would have broken me if I hadn't already gone through, obviously, a much more meaningful tragedy, which is losing, a human being that you love. So, your first tragedy prepares you for the other tragedies, right? And make you more resilient and allow you, to me, it was especially important, I guess, to be resilient this time because I have children and, there's more people depending on me. And, my husband. And whereas the first time around, in a way, I was alone to deal with it. You know, I had a great support system and everything, but it prepared me to now ride, hopefully, the next strategies of life more in a more centered way.
Yeah.
That benefits essentially my children.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like gave you so much perspective.
That's
and
right.
You came out the other end stronger,
right.
which I so admire you for,
right.
by the way. There's many people that would have just gone to bed for a year, but
Thank you. Not an option.
not to switch gears.
Yes, let's switch gears.
This brings me to a segment we're calling What It Takes, where an audience member and entrepreneur gets to ask for advice and hear more on what it takes to get where you are. So today, Matt, an e-commerce founder from London, asks, many executives talk about how when you're building something, you can't tell in the moment whether it's going to work. The outcomes only become clear in hindsight. Was there ever a time in your journey where you thought it wasn't going to work and you wanted to give up?
Yes, Matt, definitely. It's almost like a yes and no. I think it's really important to, I'm going to say two opposing truths, to have very strong beliefs and convictions and to go into something having done the work, the research, the visioning, the strategic thinking. But at the same time, the opposing truth is to be flexible and open to what you learn along the way. It's like driving a car. When you drive straight, you're not actually just holding the steering wheel straight. You're kind of adjusted, right? Like we don't drive like this. We go like that. That's kind of how I see building a business, is have your North Star, be clear, but the path there is kind of a little zigzaggy, and take the feedback along the way. And so, yes to second guessing yourself, but it's more about taking what you learn and instead of second guessing, adjusting ever so slightly to find kind of the zigzag path to your North Star.
Thanks so much for that, Amina. Now we're going to do a quick rapid fire round.
Sure.
Don't overthink it. Just say whatever comes to mind.
Uh-oh.
Ready?
Okay.
What is your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
Watching Netflix for like 6 minutes before I fall asleep on the couch.
That's mom life, it sounds like.
Oh my God, yeah.
How many hours of sleep do you get every night?
7,
Oh, that's not bad.
not bad.
If you could open a PS terminal anywhere in the world, no restrictions, where would it be?
Paris, but that's happening.
Oh, all right. How do you prepare mentally before a big event?
Sleep, hydration, and like no TV before bed. So like getting to bed early, reading a book, being very hydrated, and kind of letting myself naturally go to sleep without screens or anything.
What's your biggest pet peeve in the workplace?
Lying, which is generally my pet peeve.
What do you like to ask in a hiring interview?
So many things, but I like to ask people personal questions. I always find that that's when you see their personality, because everyone's putting on a show when responding to the answers, but then you see kind of the glimmer in their eye when you're like, so what do you do for fun? And they're like, I love to dance. I'm a dancer. And you're like, whoa, tell me about that. And then that can lead you to kind of more insights about the person.
Right, more authentic answers. Interesting. What is some of the best advice you've ever received?
Slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Thank you so much for that, Amina.
Welcome.
Well said. Thank you for sharing your time and insight with us, and also
Michelle.
just your experience. We're so admire your
Thank you.
story.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for joining us on Behind the Business. For more stories on business and leadership, follow our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. See you next week.